Hello, I'll be talking about self-identity in the modern context and how it is being challenged by contemporary influences. Now, throughout this video, I'll be referring to an essay, and for some context, I wrote this essay for a university course, and the prompt that I was supposed to be responding to was about university and its place in future, especially with the consideration of artificial intelligence. So that's why the essay is shaped how it is. And this essay was rejected by my tutor because it really doesn't talk about university and AI. As you see, it focuses on self-identity, as I found that much more interesting, and we'll get into that now. I start by defining self-identity. Self-identity grants purpose to the lives of individuals. It can secure one's belief in themselves and the communities with which they identify, in turn giving them confidence and a sense of purpose. What I'm trying to say here is that humans are intellectually capable, very capable, and emotionally aware, so they need a sense of self-purpose and identity. This is relevant because in first world countries, humans have access to resources that they need to survive. So why should they go outside and go to work? What purpose do they have on this earth? That's why humans need this sense of self-identity and purpose. Otherwise, they'll just fall into a spiral of existentialism, which can lead to depression, and they truly won't have a purpose. I then continue with the thesis by saying in future, self-identity and purpose will be increasingly challenged due to declining socialization throughout adolescence. This will occur as technology continues to replace human experiences. I'll get into that now because the rest of the intro is just about university. I start off by defining self-identity and then going into how it will be challenged. So self-identity is the understanding and definition of oneself, and as society becomes increasingly connected to technology, there'll be less capacity remaining to connect within itself. This will occur as once regular happenings are replaced with easier, more conventional and efficient digital alternatives. And this is an issue because these alternatives lack the developing experiences that contribute to the growth of one's self-identity. As you can see by the narrations below, or to the side, the first paragraph I'll be talking about iPad kids, and this will really elucidate what I mentioned in the introduction to this paragraph. So the outsourcing of parental supervision and entertainment for children during early development is already extremely prevalent. Excessive technology use during early cognitive development can reduce opportunities for language and interpersonal development. During early childhood, the most significant cognitive development occurs, so if children aren't encouraged to engage interpersonally throughout their maturity, then they'll lack the interpersonal experiences and skills that are subconsciously used to develop their self-identity and purpose. Now, what I'm getting at specifically here is the iPad kids, who spend all of their adolescence on a screen, whether that be a YouTube video or a game. What they're doing is they are taking away all the opportunities from the external environment that they could be absorbing into their brain. As at this age, the brain is designed to be intaking all of these new pieces of information and language and entering it into their brain so that they can develop it very, very quickly. That's why kids can learn skills so much faster than adults. So if these kids spend all their time on their iPads, then they will really lack some development that is crucial to their future self-identity. The next paragraph continues the same theme, but brings it into more so the context of social media, as you can see by the narration doom scroll. So as entertainment technology continues to erode individuals' attention spans through a self-reinforcing cycle of constant stimulation and increasing dopamine exploitation, society is becoming further desensitized to ordinary experiences. So what I'm talking about here specifically is short-form content and Instagram scrolling. So when you're scrolling, you're just continually engaging in this short-form content, which feeds into your dopamine receptors. And the negative impact of this and why it can erode your attention span is because it desensitizes you to regular experiences, and it gives you this need for the short-form content and the instant stimulation. You might have experienced this firsthand while watching a movie. If you can recall 5 to 10 years ago when you'd be watching a movie, you might have even experienced this engrossment in the film that you are unable to get today unless you're in a cinema. You might feel the need while watching a movie today to pull out your phone and scroll on some reels or some TikToks or on Facebook just to stimulate yourself because a movie isn't stimulating enough. This is just some primary evidence about how short form content is eroding and neutralizing your dopamine receptors. I continue by stating that this desensitization fosters chronic boredom and a perceived lack of meaning, which all contributes to identity diffusion. Contemporary culture reflects this through the growing formation of highly specified and niche social groups and identities, which serve as avenues for individuals to find a sense of significance and belonging in an otherwise overstimulated and fragmented environment. Digital spaces augment niche identities, making social media a particularly influential platform for self-expression and experimentation. This fragmentation, while offering niche avenues for online expression, also limits the tangible social construction, reinforcing the necessity of physical modes such as universities. So in these few sentences, I'm transitioning away from the dopamine and the concentration exploitation that is occurring on social media and into the realm of how social media provides this avenue for individuals to supplement any lack of sense of self-identity by engaging in online communities where they can augment their gender or other forms of identity in order to find relation and compassion with other people experiencing the same things as they are. And then the next subparagraph continues this trend by talking about how the broad identifying systems such as religion and university aren't sufficient anymore. Modern technologies, particularly social media, reward differentiation and expressive self-labeling, encouraging people to adopt increasingly specific or unconventional identities, such as what I was talking about earlier. This phenomenon is consistent with Van Tilburg and Igu's meaning regulation model of boredom, suggesting that these requirements for these people in order to feel purpose in their lives, it's actually stemming from boredom. And for many, these micro-communities provide the sense of purpose and belonging that the traditional institutions once fulfilled. Many individuals express their identities through gender specification and changes to their appearance. You might see this commonly through tattoos or uncommonly through things like body modification. This is when people sharpen their teeth to be like a vampire, or dye their eyeballs, or have pointy ears. All of these things are included and can be justified by the use of social media as a means of gaining meaningful affirmations for the diverse communities which they are a part of. And despite the affirmation that social media can provide, it can also be detrimental because there's an algorithmic amplification of extreme content, and it's linked to risky behavior in adolescence. This can potentially reinforce extreme expressions of identity, affecting how individuals might define themselves. And an example of this could be young people changing genders before they have had the chance for their frontal cortex to develop. If this is done before the individual is properly mature, then they could easily make the wrong decision, which can lead to immense regret and further self-identity challenges. I then conclude the paragraph by talking about how university can work as a place to fulfill adolescents' desires for self-identification rather than using online spaces, before I go into the next body paragraph, which has an emphasis about sociability and its necessity in society. I introduce by talking about how the succeeding generations will have a decrease in social capabilities and how this is a concern for most workplaces. And this is definitely a real issue for modern workplaces, as almost every position will require you to either work customer-facing or work in a team with other co-workers to solve issues or complete tasks. This is all why universities incorporate so much social work into their courses, and I talk about this in the first paragraph. It's become an explicit goal to facilitate the development of interpersonal engagement, and although the intent is derived from the professional aspect, the social performances instigated can be just as effective for self-identity development as it is for the professional development, and this is all because they are developed through the same sorts of experiences. And in the next paragraph, I talk about how mainly group work participation is effective for encouraging collaboration and how that benefits individuals. This is namely done through getting new perspectives, motivating others, communicating with impact, team interaction through questioning, and resolving conflicts that might arise through group work. This all contributes to an individual's sense of position in a group context. This can help to reaffirm their identity as they know what their role is in a group. Furthermore, navigating conflicts and contributing to common goals requires individuals to negotiate their personal and professional identities, reinforcing confidence and purpose. And what consolidating these personal values does is it creates a stronger, more central identity for the individual. I then talk about how significant universities are as a place for identity development, especially for the students who felt alienated during their high school experience. The important takeaway from this is that people who don't have strong friendship groups in high school are likely to suffer from a lack of confidence and identity. And what university does here is it provides a landscape where many people can gain an education together. And with any increase in sample size, there's bound to be more people just like the alienated nerds or the people who just struggle to find connections in high school when it comes to university. And they can find these people in things like societies where your niche interests are shared. I remember in my high school there was only one student who liked Yu-Gi-Oh! But in my university there's a whole society dedicated to the card game. So this person would definitely find more confidence in their hobbies, in their personality, because they have more like-minded people who have similar hobbies and can therefore give them confidence in their own interests. I then move into the next body paragraph where I talk about how people must be willing to expose themselves socially if they want to gain the benefits that come from social interactions. As you can see, I've commented on the introduction with the proverb, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, you can't force it to drink. So what this is alluding to is that naturally people vary in their willingness to explore their own identities. Some people, like introverts, will always prefer to remain isolated rather than undergo self-reflection if it means exploration, whilst others who are naturally more extroverted will actively seek opportunities for personal growth, even if it's subconscious, just because they enjoy interacting with others. And universities provide a profound opportunity for this self-growth because there's people your age and your demographic, and you can even go into buildings with people studying the same thing as you, where conversation should be easily made. The first sub-body paragraph talks about how people are aware of self-reflecting activities, however, they just aren't interested in engaging with them. I then reference a study which talks about how reluctant and hesitant to engage socially often contain patterns of problematic internet usage, which is correlated with social anxiety. And furthermore, evidence suggests that higher internet use in mid-adolescence predicts increased levels of social and generalized anxiety only 2 years later. In this study, the results were found particularly in girls, and I believe this is because girls and boys engage with social media in completely different ways throughout adolescence. I think that this occurs because when boys gain access to the internet, they tend to search for answers to the questions that they've always been asking. And this often comes through the form of extreme content, whether that be age inappropriate or violent, such as car crashes, whereas girls might be impacted by social media in a more psychological manner, where they will just find these influencers who Photoshop their body, and these influencers who live in particular ways, who they just compare themselves to an extreme and unhealthy level, which makes them feel inadequate in their own identity, whether that's their physical or mental image of themselves, which makes them more reluctant to engage socially, as they aren't proud and confident of who they are. In the subsequent paragraph, I'm mainly talking about the transitionary period from high school life to university life. This is such a significant time in an individual's life because this is when they transition from having a controlled lifestyle, their parents wake them up, and the school dictates when they wake up and go home and what they learn and when they eat and what they do, to the university life, where it's completely controlled by the student. This also applies to people who move into full-time work or casual work, and namely don't go into university straight after high school, because they're in the same situation where they're in control of the friendship groups that they participate in, when they eat, what they spend their free time doing, and all of these other things. So what I've written here is that the social independence of tertiary education provides a space where individuals make personal decisions regarding who they associate with and what values they prioritize. This is especially true when it comes to self-education, as when students leave high school, they're often unprepared for independent learning, and they must formulate their own personalized methodology of study. This is a form of self-reflection and evaluation, as trial and error must occur. This applies equally to the development of self-identity. The process of transitioning from a lifestyle of institutional control, such as schools or parental force, to a highly autonomous lifestyle requires new aspects of an individual to be confronted. Through this confrontation, new opinions about how one desires to structure their own life are created, directly refining their self-identity. Furthermore, during the process of navigating autonomy for the first time, the presence of supportive peer networks ensures that these explorations are validated and socially reinforced. This can be why some of the most influential social groups of a person's life can be formed right as they enter university, as the human experience of transitioning lifestyles can be very significant and impactful to their identity. So when their struggles are reinforced and validated by friends and acquaintances in the same position, they feel very reaffirmed in their position, and it gives them this immense feeling of confidence in where they're going and a sense of purpose. The reliance and comfort of being in a group is exacerbated by the circumstances, resulting in further self-identification with the group. Then I move into the final paragraph where I talk about how participation in several distinct in-groups or social groups extremely effective in developing one's sense of self-identity. This is because this engagement prompts the individual to consolidate their differing perspectives, thus refining their self-identity to be more coherent and resilient. Moreover, those individuals in multiple groups will often feel more confident in how they express themselves due to their refinement, as well as their several sources of social support which they have access to. And what I'm referring to throughout these sentences is that when an individual participates in multiple social groups, particularly with distinct values, they develop these different hobbies and these different attitudes to regular activities. And here they have to consolidate all of these different opinions and perspectives of life and activities in order to what they most align with. And in doing so, they gain all of these unified and strengthened opinions, which are only reaffirmed by the groups that they participate in, to all up form and develop this unified and concentrated sense of self-purpose, giving them this newfound confidence that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And then I give a conclusion about how universities provide a space for all of this development and how it's important for professional skills and how technology is limiting the socialization by adolescents. But what I was really talking about in this essay was how self-identity is being challenged in the modern context, and how social media and doom scrolling and iPad kids are only reducing from the opportunities that they'll have in their life. And this is continued all the way through till adulthood, as adults spend time on their phone that they could be spending getting meaningful connections with others. Whilst some people do prefer to remain on their phone, these introvert types, most people are extroverted. By most I mean about 50 to 60%. So when these people are on their phones, what they're doing is they're reducing their own confidence to engage with others because they're spending all their time on their phone and they're seeing everyone else do it. And I believe that most people would actually prefer to be engaging with a stranger and reflecting upon their day and learning something new about someone else, rather than numbing their brains with this short-form content which is taking over their attention spans. So, in conclusion, I believe that every individual must go out of their way to socially expose themselves and interact with others in order to gain more confidence in themselves and, in turn, have a more confident society with shared values who connect with each other and value social experiences so that people feel less alienated in our world and more confident in the government and community that they're a part of.